Will home prices continue to rise in 2016, or is there a slowdown in order? Hessam Nadji is the Senior Executive Vice President at Marcus & Millichap. Great to have you with us, Hessam. What's your opinion on the impact of lower oil prices on the area?
Thanks for having me on the program. Great to be with you. At a macro level, lower energy prices obviously bode well for the consumer. We saw consumer sentiment rebound today very nicely. Lower input prices for companies and profitability. So at a macro level, it actually helps sustain the economic recovery and the deflationary factor that comes into the equation when it comes to Fed expectations going in 2016, all bode very well. Now, there are local markets, as we discussed earlier. Houston, for example, is hit harder just because its economic diversity, even though it's come a long way since the 80s and early 90s, it's still dependent on energy more than many other metros. You mentioned Dallas. We've seen about 100,000 jobs being created net in Dallas over the past 12 months. Austin is still holding up very well. So there are very few pockets of direct negative impact. At a macro level, the energy situation has been a positive for the economic recovery.
Talk to us about 2016 and where you see the most opportunity. Let's say you want to go buy a home in 2016 for the best capital return by the end of the year. What area would you be looking at right now?
Well, it's important to keep in mind that both the for-sale housing market, the rental market are very strong, and they're benefiting from job creation. We're well ahead of the job losses that we experienced during the recession. We've added more than 4.5 million jobs in addition to the recovery of the 8.7 million jobs that were recovered. So it's very broad-based. But we are transitioning from a rapid recovery mode in terms of appreciation, gains year over year in terms of sales, both in the housing market and the commercial real estate market in general, and transitioning to more of a sustainable, more of a healthy, normalized rate of growth that is actually really good news because it's really prolonging the cycle and it's reducing the risk of bubbles. So if you look at the markets that have recovered the most, look at the job creation. I mentioned Dallas earlier, New York, look at Atlanta, look at Los Angeles, Boston, Seattle, San Jose, and even markets like Minneapolis are showing really nice recovery, both on the rental side and the for-sale housing side. So there are opportunity markets. Florida, for example, we consider an opportunity market because the job growth there has come back very nicely.
Where in Florida?
What's that?
Where in Florida? Because yesterday we were talking about how there might be an overbuild in condominiums in Miami.
Sure. Miami, in particular, has some oversupply still, but they're adding about 17,000 to 20,000 jobs. We're seeing West Palm come back very nicely. We're seeing Fort Lauderdale come back very nicely, and Tampa and Orlando in particular come back very nicely because of the job numbers. Phoenix and Atlanta are two other markets that have shown great recovery. And again, because of the job numbers and lack of overbuilding, at least so far in the cycle, they bode well going into 2016.
Who's not working? Where would you not buy a house with somebody else's money?
Well, again, the housing shift from speculation, which we saw in 06 and 07, problematic in the market, obviously led to a lot of problems, has now been replaced by a more fundamentals-based, jobs-based, household growth-based kind of a dynamic, which is very positive. We think that's sustainable because even today, the rate of household formation exceeds the total construction of both apartments and single-family housing. So demand is exceeding supply. So if you look at the markets where we really don't have the drivers, job growth drivers, to the degree that we should, some of the Midwest markets are still struggling to recover. Those in particular stand out. And some of the boom-bust markets that tend to have a lot of job growth, a lot of population growth, like Texas, that tend to overbuild are ones to watch in going forward because the overbuilding tends to really catch on at this stage of the cycle.
Hessam, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Hessam Nadji, the Senior Executive Vice President at Marcus & Millichap.